Hello, today I have with me Martin Murphy, Chief Executive of Syncona Investment Management and co-founder of Syncona in 2012. Syncona is included within the Interactive Investor ACE 40 list of rated ethical funds. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Lee. Good to see you, and thanks for the invitation.
Okay, well, your objective with all of your investments is, you've always got an eye on an exit, and how you sort of realize that investment. And I just wonder, are there any holdings in your portfolio currently that are near to perhaps a stock market listing, close to IPO?
First of all, a comment on how we think about IPO. This is one of the features of this sector. It is a capital-intensive sector, and that's why we always maintain a strong balance sheet, a central part of the Syncona model. And as we're growing these companies, typically we set them up, we will be the first investor. We would then look to think how we're going to bring other capital into those businesses as they grow. And one option for that is to go to the public market. And I think Syncona has been, really singularly successful in taking some of our businesses to NASDAQ, which is the US technology market, as you know. It's really the deepest, most liquid pool of life science capital available. But it's important to say for us, we don't view that as an exit per se. We view that as a financing event to allow us to fulfill our ambition for these companies of them developing their products all the way to the market.
Now, Syncona shares trade at a premium to their net asset value. I mean, that implies investors like the portfolio holdings think they've got great potential. You just explain to our viewers how a trust like Syncona accurately values its holdings, and do you try and manage the premium at all?
We don't manage the premium at all. We view that we like to focus on the things that we can control, and that really is focusing on delivering the business in the way that I've sort of outlined earlier today. I think, how do we rationalize the premium, I think is perhaps what you're getting at here. And I think we look at our valuation policy, which I think is prudent. We hold our private companies at cost. We're not marking these businesses up absent a true arm's length mark, which could be, for example, when we take a business to the public market, clearly we're holding those businesses at the market value because we've got a sophisticated price setting mechanism. What we're not doing is in a business, we have, for example, a business called Gyroscope in our portfolio. It's a gene therapy business for the back of the eye for a different disease called dry age-related macular degeneration. We're very excited about that company, but we've not marked that company up. In our view, it's made terrific progress over the last few years, but it's held at cost on our balance sheet. And I think some of what you're seeing in the premium is a recognition from the market around the valuation approach that we've taken. I think also evidenced by the fact that when we have released businesses to the market, either because we've sold them, in the case of Nightstar and Blue Earth, for example, Blue Earth was a business. It's a second business that we've sold actually since we got going. It's a business that, again, we founded. It was a spin out from GE Healthcare that we founded six years ago now. And we sold that to Bracco Imaging for just under $500 million. It was a 10x return for us. And so I think part of what people are seeing is that when we have gone to the market and priced things up, they've seen price progression. I think some of that is reflected in the premium that you see on the stock.
Okay, what is it exactly you look for, Martin, in a company? So you put it in the feelers out. You clearly know the industry. Well, what is it you look for in a company that will convince you to put money into the business?
I mean, it's multiple things. And first of all, what we're looking for is a very significant unmet patient need. I sort of picked that up earlier, Lee, in that what we're not interested in is these sort of incremental things. The reason we focus on that is, one, we're motivated to do it. Frankly, it's a pretty worthwhile goal to spend your life trying to do those things. But secondly, it's economically rational as well, which is we're building these companies over the long term, and it can take 6 to 10 years to get these products to market. And at that point, you need to be confident that you've got a differentiated product, the system, whether that's a commercial insurer in the United States or a national insurer, in case of National Health System in the UK, will pay for. So First of all, one of the core skills in the business is for any given disease to really be able to map what is the disease, what are the treatments, and if you like, where are the holes where patients are being poorly served. We then look to match, if you like, that unmet need with the technology, and we say, this piece of technology, could it become a product that if it worked, would have the properties that would fill that niche? And typically associated with those technologies, of course, is the founders, and we want those founders who will typically be academics working in an institution. Often they're in the earliest, they're in their mid-40s, latest in their mid-60s, typically sometimes even older. But there'll be people who have spent many decades working in their field and are globally significant key opinion leaders. So we look for that kind of key opinion leader with technology that we think can fit a niche. And then, of course, what you've got to do is, okay, that's the sort of entry gate. Then you've got to figure out, well, how would I develop it? What kind of clinical study would I do? What kind of endpoints? How much would that cost? How long would it take? What would a regulator need to see for approval? What's the risk of doing that? And of course, I mentioned it before, this is a risky asset class. And one of the challenges here, of course, is managing that risk. And I think one of the things we like about our approach is because we do a small number of things, we think we understand them very deeply, and at least we're cognizant of the risks that we're taking. And our model, to the extent that we navigate those risks, means that we can get paid for having taken them. So it's really that combination of things. We start with the patient need, have somebody who we think is globally distinct with technology to address it, and then have a very detailed view on what would you need to do, how long would it take, how much capital and what risk, and actually can you then frame a credible investment thesis around that.
You know, I mean, that leads on quite nicely to my next question about sort of ratings for tech stocks, which are causing concern at the moment, have done for quite some time. But is it the same in the biotech sector in terms of valuation? And also, you know, how do you agree an entry price for your investments? One that's not listed on a stock exchange.
So first, so two questions there. Start with the sort of investor appetite for this sector. Look, it's extremely high at the moment, and I think in part that reflects what have been fundamental technical improvements. So we are in an era where it's now possible to really understand patients at a single patient level. And I mentioned that before. Again, I have to give you a bit of science to explain that. There is a set of technology that's now routinely available. An example of it is DNA sequencing. So the first human genome was sequenced over 20 years ago now, and it took about 3,000 or 4,000 people, 3 or 4 years, and it probably cost $3 or $4 billion. Actually, today, if I wanted to sequence your genome, Lee, I could get a little swab, a few skin cells from inside your teeth. I could ship it to Illumina, and they will turn that round in 24 hours and charge me a few $100 for it. And so what you've seen is massive improvement in the ability to really understand patients. And that is powering what is really a golden age of drug discovery with completely new modalities coming along. For example, I mentioned cell and gene therapy, but look in the vaccine space. You've heard of some of these vaccines. You've probably heard of the Moderna vaccine. You've heard of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. These are 2 COVID-19 vaccines. These are using nucleic acids. They're using RNA. This is a sort of next generation technology, which is now right in the forefront of addressing disease. And so I think there are some pretty significant fundamentals here that people believe will translate into multiple products for human disease that currently is intractable. And that's what's really motoring the interest in the sector.
Sure. I mean, you've clearly got lots of exciting developments within your portfolio, but I guess to finish off with it, I'm just trying to get a sort of an idea of sort of future prospects. Is there sort of one or two real standouts there that for some reason you have the highest hopes for?
Look, we start out with high hopes for all of our companies. Of course, some of them don't work, and we have had failures along the way, and that will happen again. We've had some big successes as well. I mentioned Blue Earth and Nightstar. They were two of the very first companies that we built. And actually what we do is we build these companies and we think of them as sort of in vintages, really, reflecting when we built them. And the first three of those companies that we built were Blue Earth, sold for 10x, Nightstar sold for 4.5x, and Autilus, which is now a listed NASDAQ business in the cell therapy space. And so we're excited about those businesses because they're beginning to generate clinical data. And it's clinical data that really shows what these companies can do. And so they are moving. I think they're taking up a lot of our attention. But behind that, we have a portfolio which often doesn't get a lot of airtime when we're talking to shareholders because on the balance sheet, it looks rather small amount of our capital allocation, which just reflects the fact that we're putting capital into these businesses in a disciplined way. Actually, we're super excited about those companies. So Quell, which is a company using cell therapy for the treatment of autoimmune disease, or Swan, which is a gene therapy company using gene therapy for the treatment of central nervous system disease. We're very excited about these businesses. So we think this is quite a diversified portfolio, and we think there's multiple companies here that we think have the potential to be significant.
Great, lots to look forward to then. Martin Murphy at Syncona, thanks very much for joining me today.
Great pleasure, enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, Lee.